News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yes, good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick, Christys and Mercy Muroki on your TV, online and on radio. We're here all the way through until midday, so let's kickstart your week with today's biggest stories and, of course, strong opinions as well.
Yes, and we'd love to hear your opinions, so make sure you get in touch with your views. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email. We'll get to those throughout the programme, but first is the latest news.
A very good morning to you. It's 10 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Ukraine's president has asked the European Union for immediate accession to the EU as talks are held today with Moscow on the Belarus border to try to end the conflict. Well, on day 5 of the fighting now, Ukraine faced more heavy fire overnight, with fighting near the city of Mariupol and blasts being heard in Kiev and Kharkiv this morning. Well, the UK Ministry of Defence says the bulk of Russia's ground forces are said to be around 18 miles north of the capital. Satellite images taken yesterday show a military convoy heading towards Kiev. The Russian news agency Interfax claims 2 towns in the southeast of the country have been captured. Now, meanwhile, the Ukrainian military has released footage which shows a Russian missile system being destroyed in a drone strike. Ukraine says the BUK missile launcher was targeted in the city of Malin, around 60 miles northwest of Kyiv. There have been calls for foreigners with combat experience to join the fight. But the Armed Forces Minister, James Heappey, told GB News British citizens should think twice about going.
War is brutal. It's not the sort of thing that you jump on a plane to go and do for the fun of it. The people that you are seeing picking up Kalashnikov rifles in Kyiv today are doing so because they face an existential threat and they are desperate, and that is inspirational. But I don't think we should be encouraging British citizens to go to Ukraine.
Well, the UK Prime Minister is chairing a cabinet meeting this morning. Britain's now joined the US and the EU in banning financial transactions with the Russian Central Bank, Finance Ministry and Wealth Fund that effectively cuts Moscow off from Western financial markets. The government's also fast-tracking legislation to stop dirty money being laundered through the UK's property market. Well, Russia's central bank has more than doubled its key interest rate in what is now an unprecedented 20%. They're trying to shore up the ruble, which has now fallen to an all-time low against the dollar after sanctions were imposed against Moscow. They include the blocking of some Russian banks from the international banking system, SWIFT. The UK is likely to follow the EU's lead in taking Ukrainian refugees for the next 3 years as hundreds of thousands flee the country in the wake of the invasion. The chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Tom Tugendhat, says the policy will be reviewed in the coming days. Boris Johnson's already announced immediate family members can join Ukrainians currently living in the UK. Anna Zek from the Association of Ukrainians in Great Britain says the UK should open its doors to those fleeing conflict.
I'm actually the daughter of someone who was welcomed by Great Britain after the Second World War, who built the Ukrainian community in Coventry. Britain welcomed refugees then from war-torn Germany, where they had been slave workers. And we want the same now.
Russia's international football team has been ordered to play its matches under the name Football Union of Russia in neutral countries with no flags, fans or the national anthem. Nations including England, Wales and Poland are refusing to play against them. The governing body FIFA has also said Russia could be excluded from this year's World Cup. And in other news closer to home now, coronavirus restrictions are being eased in Scotland today. Mandatory vaccine passports for nightclubs, concerts and football matches are being scrapped. Students and teachers no longer have to wear masks in the classroom, but they do still have to be worn in communal areas, and distancing rules will apply. Of course, we're going to be keeping you up to date all day here on GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, let's head to Patrick and Mercy for To The Point.
A very good morning. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Muroki, and Patrick Christys on your TV, radio and online. We've got a big show today. We'll be giving you all the updates you need to hear, hearing your views and giving our opinions as well. So here's what's coming up.
Yeah, we'll bring you the latest from Ukraine with our Home Security editor, Mark White, as Russian President Vladimir Putin puts his nuclear forces on high alert. We'll give you all the very latest with our expert guests as well throughout the programme.
Yes, we'll also be covering stories closer to home, such as how the NHS is facing a mass exodus of staff due to stress and burnout. Former chair of the British Medical Association, Dr. Lawrence Buckman, gives us his thoughts on whether this issue is being given enough attention as it deserves.
And finally, as the numbers identifying as Christian hit record lows, the Archbishop of Canterbury himself says he's struggling to lure in more worshippers. Well, we're going to ask, can Britain continue to call itself a Christian country?
Yes, that's all coming up on this show and much more as well. And get in touch with your views. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email. We'll get to those throughout the show. But first, Patrick gives his views on housing Ukrainian refugees.
I want to start today by throwing it over to you, the viewer, the listener. I want to ask what you think about Britain taking Ukrainian refugees. We are witnessing a proper war. There can be no doubt about that. The Ukrainians are putting up a tremendous fight and showing immense resilience and bravery. They're also running an incredibly slick online propaganda machine that makes it look like they might actually be winning. But when all is said and done, facts are facts, and the Russian military is a behemoth. It is a David versus Goliath situation. I want us to assume that unless both sides sit down at the negotiating table very soon and thrash out a deal, eventually Russia will hoist its flag above Kiev's government's buildings. That will be a very, very dark day indeed. So there will be millions of Ukrainian refugees. Are we full here in the UK right now? Have we got room for at least some of them? Do we have a moral duty to throw open our borders? Have we already extended the hand of charity far enough? What's happening now does expose serious questions about our asylum system that many of us have been talking about for years. For a long time now, we've been a soft touch. Just take the Channel as an example. We've allowed tens of thousands of undocumented migrants, some have even called them illegal immigrants, haven't they, of course, to enter this country. We've hardly deported any of them. We spend £4.7 million a day, apparently, housing Channel migrants and asylum seekers in hotels. This is comprised of £3.5 million for hotels, 25,000 asylum seekers as well, largely made up of Channel migrants, and, of course, £1.2 million for the 12,000 Afghan refugees evacuated from Kabul. If you scale this up, that would amount to £1.7 billion over the year and represents more than 4 times the 8,000 asylum seekers housed in hotels at the beginning of last year. It's a lot of money, it's a lot of people, it's a lot of resources, it's a lot of hotel rooms, isn't it? Well, apparently there isn't enough social housing, and that's why we have to put them in these hotels. So on top of all of that, I'm sure we're all feeling the pinch at the moment as well, aren't we? Personally, gas bills, electricity, the cost of living in general. Many of us feel a lot poorer than we did a couple of years ago. And that's not going to get any better anytime soon, is it? So, with all that in mind, do you think we should take in Ukrainian refugees? On paper, as a nation, we have a lot in common with Ukrainians. They are a Christian country. They share a lot of the same values and norms as we do. We have quite a similar culture, as it were. I think it will be very interesting to see what Germany does, won't it? Merkel, of course, threw her country, indeed the continent's borders open when there was a conflict in the Middle East. Will Germany do the same now that there's a conflict in Europe? So I'll finish now how I started, by throwing it over to you. Do you think we should take Ukrainian refugees? Do you feel as though Britain is full? Do we have a moral duty to take them? Where do you stand? Because this is a question that's going to be asked a lot in the coming weeks and months. How do you feel about it?
I certainly don't think we're full, and I think it's a bit of a red herring to suggest the inflow of channel migrants means we're full, because actually it's very small numbers. You have to think the number of legal migration and net migration is over 200,000 on any given year. When we're talking about channel migrants, we're talking about, in previous years, a few thousand here and there. Obviously now it's gone up into five-figure numbers. So I don't think the fact that there's migrants crossing the channel is adding substantially to the number of the population. I think that's not the question to ask, really. The question is the moral question, which is, do we have a moral duty to, bring in some Ukrainian refugees? And I absolutely think we do. I think that's what we are as a nation. That's those are the values we espouse. We are very charitable, and we have a long history of taking in refugees who are fighting tyranny. And so I think the question fundamentally is a moral one, and I think we should take
You think we should? I mean, I find it very difficult to see how we can't, really. I mean, and we shouldn't really be trying to find ways to not take them. I think, we're looking over there at the moment. There can be no doubt that it is, as I've said, a proper war. One of the reasons why I've been highlighting some of the things like the channel issue is just because that's a lot of things that people are saying on Twitter. That's a lot of things that people are saying in my inbox right here, gbviews at gbnews.uk. People are saying, hey, look, I think that this country's full. I think that we haven't got any more hotel rooms, this, that and the other. Well, that's why I'm floating it over to you. How do you feel about that situation? Do you feel as though, actually, we should be taking these people? Is it a moral duty, as Mercy said? I believe it probably is a moral duty, to be fair. And let us know what you think about that, gbviews at gbnews.uk. But our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, joins us now. And what are the delegates hoping to achieve today, Mark? I believe there's a meeting, isn't there? What's going on?
Yes, that delegation of Ukrainian officials helicoptered in to an area on the Belarusian Ukrainian border for these talks with Russian officials. They arrived there at this venue about an hour or so ago. Their immediate priority, according to the Ukrainian delegation, is for a ceasefire, an immediate ceasefire, and a withdrawal of Russian troops. Having said that, President Zelensky himself, the Ukrainian president, has been quoted as saying that he is not at all hopeful that there will be much in the way of a breakthrough, but he says you've got to try. And that is why this delegation has gone at some significant risk, of course, given that we are in that country in a war zone at the moment. They have gone up to this area just over the border, we think, in the city of Gomel. In terms of the lines that have been coming out from various government ministers here in the UK today and the Ministry of Defence, we had some images that were actually tweeted by James Cleverly, the Foreign Office Minister, of Ukrainian soldiers who had, according to James Cleverly, these shoulder-launched missiles provided to them by the UK military, wearing as well those British military fatigues. There have been thousands of members of the Ukrainian military who have been trained by British military personnel in recent months in their use. And significantly as well, we've heard from James Heappey and from the Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, James Heappey, of course, being the Armed Forces Minister, that there have been weapon systems that have been smuggled across the border now into Ukraine, despite the fact that the fighting has begun. So we, of course, as a country, had supplied Ukraine with weapon systems in the lead up to this invasion. Now the invasion has happened and the fighting is raging throughout Ukraine. It's much more difficult to get these weapon systems in, but they're managing to do that. And the Ukrainians say they are using them to really good effect, that they have taken out many armoured personnel carriers and tanks. We've no way of independently verifying that, although the UK Ministry of Defence also says their intelligence analysis on the ground confirms that a significant number of Russian military vehicles has been taken out. They've also got drones that they have been supplied to the Ukrainian military from Turkey, and they've released images showing what they say is this Turkish manufacturer drone taking out a book mobile missile launcher, a Russian missile launcher on the ground, where you see the missile coming in and a huge explosion on that armoured convoy, one armoured convoy heading towards the Kiev area, we understand. As far as that main military convoy is concerned, well, the British Ministry of Defence say that now it is just some 18 miles from Kiev, from the Ukrainian capital, so hasn't reached there yet. There was satellite images that were released yesterday that showed this convoy snaking its way down. At that point, when the images were taken, the convoy was about 40 miles from the Ukrainian capital. It's a huge convoy, hundreds of vehicles. It's about 3 miles long, also involving amongst the convoy are tanks, armoured personnel carriers, tankers, lots of different military vehicles. And crucially, I think for the Russians, there are fuel tankers, food trucks, the kind of things they need for the logistics supplies. So heading towards the Ukrainian capital and about 18 or so miles from the capital as we speak. As of the humanitarian crisis, you mentioned that, Patrick and Mercy, at the top of the programme, and this issue of whether the UK should be taking refugees. I think in the days and weeks ahead, the British government will be looking to see what more they can do to assist. The immediate humanitarian crisis, of course, is on the borders of Ukraine, those NATO countries, friendly allies of Ukraine, such as Poland and Romania, where hundreds of thousands of refugees have spilt across the border. In fact, we're told the latest news from the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, that refugee agency at the UN, is that 422,000 refugees have spilled over the borders into neighbouring countries from Ukraine to get away from the fighting. And there are some 7 million internally displaced still in Ukraine, but have left the areas of the worst fighting. So that gives an indication, with 7 million internally displaced, that many, many more in the days ahead could spill over the borders.
Mark White, thank you for that update. Very concerning situation, and we, of course, will be bringing you all the updates here on GB News across the day. Now, we've heard reports of volunteers joining Ukraine's armed defence, but what about their cyber defence, while Ukraine has a volunteer IT army that's fighting back on the cyber front?
Yes, but how serious is the Russian cyber attack threat? And frankly, as well, will it be hitting us anytime soon? Richard Bingley is a cybersecurity expert, and he joins us now. Thank you very much, Richard. Great to have you on the show. Let's just localise it first, OK? Talk about this country, I think. How threatened, I suppose, how worried should we be about the threat of a Russian cyber attack here on home soil?
Well, I think it's been going on for many years at quite a light level, so banking systems, power companies, oil companies have been targeted. What we will see is a heightened threat level, so probably a lot more direct cyber attacks. I'm not quite sure we should be frightened. I think we should be prepared. So, people should be able to take sort of measures. Companies should take measures, but let's not be intimidated. At the end of the day, it is IT systems. They can cause severe disruption and harassment, but we've kind of got to go back to resilience and the basics of preparedness. And I think by doing that and looking at the lessons of elsewhere, then we'll be fine.
And could you just quickly just give us kind of a rundown of what exactly would a cyber threat look like? Because I have here that Russia has already attacked Ukrainian banks, government contractors, websites, the Kiev Post as well. I mean, could Russia actually perpetrate an attack against those kinds of things here in the UK?
Yeah, I mean, what it would look like is probably a combination of things. So if we look at where it's happened before, Georgia, Ukraine, Estonia, online banking systems down for a number of days, up to a dozen days, oil supplies cut off, and there was an attack on American oil pipelines last year that led to massive price surges and a lack of supply, basically. So, you couldn't get your gas for a few days. Some more sinister stuff around the attacking of email systems in political parties, senior executives, say looking around, getting information to maybe bribe and blackmail or just bring their IT systems down. And then generally sort of the hoovering up of people's individual data from social media. So what that does is that they're sort of able to pass that on to cybercrime gangs, and we get targeted on our credit cards and things pushing forward. It can be quite serious. For example, if IT services were attacked and those IT services underpin hospital services or GP records, and this has happened in America. It's happened, to be frank, it's happened in the UK a few years ago from Russian cyber attacks when they attacked Ukraine, but the spillover came into European and American IT systems. So it is significant, but I would say if people are prepared, it will be more harassment than it would be lethal, I think.
Okay, and you're sure that this would be state-sponsored, so it would be something coming from the orders of Putin, would it?
Absolutely, that's the pattern. The Russian cyber offensive takes place in two ways. Firstly, it's state-directed through state agencies working out of different buildings in Moscow, St. Petersburg, and around 15 different Russian cities. That is plausibly deniable, but what is more murky and difficult to establish are the many thousands of subcontractors or cyber mercenaries, or what they call as cyber patriots, that for just over a decade have been working on the government's behalf. It's obvious that it's coming from government direction because it attacks Western infrastructure. It doesn't attack Russian infrastructure or their allied states. The malware attacks English-speaking programs. It's programmed not to attack Russian-speaking programs or Syrian Arabic programs. So therefore, it's not going to sabotage their own troops down in the Middle East. A number of indictments have occurred where people, when they're actually interrogated in France, America, and elsewhere, they have plea bargained. So they've actually admitted what they've done and who's behind it. And then you mix that up with the general intelligence that we've been picking up over the last few years, whether it's technical or whether it's physical and surveillance.
Yeah.
It's irrefutable that the Kremlin is behind this. Not the Russian people, but the Kremlin.
Yeah.
The Kremlin. Well, Richard Bingley, thank you so much, cybersecurity expert there, for talking us through all of that very worrying stuff. But after the break, the NHS is, I get told off for saying H.
What is it supposed to be? Is it H?
I think so. But anyway, the NHS is seeing...
As long as he's not saying RNHS, by the way.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That really was.
Well, it's seeing an exodus of workers because of stress, apparently. So we're going to be talking that just after this.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A wet day for many of us, particularly for Wales, northern and western England, where the rain will be heavy at times. Showers following for parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland in the colder air behind this cold front that's crossing the country at the moment. And ahead of the cold front, East Anglia in the southeast staying largely dry, if rather cloudy, and fairly mild through the rest of Monday. But it's really across central, northern and western England where we've got the rain. Wales as well, and the rain turning heavier and more persistent, particularly across parts of Wales, southwest England, north and northwest England. Scotland, Northern Ireland feeling colder as showers follow, those showers falling as snow above 300 metres. But there will be some brighter spells away from the showers, and the rain doesn't quite reach East Anglia in the southeast until after dark. It then pushes through, and we keep the rain going into the southeast through the night. But it clears elsewhere, clear spells, and with lighter winds, a touch of frost in many northern and western parts of the UK, dipping to around freezing or just below for Scotland, Northern Ireland and northern England, but staying up at 7 or 8 Celsius in the southeast, where it will be a dull and damp start with that rain clinging on right the way through much of the day, really, for the far southeast. It eases elsewhere before another spell of rain moves into parts of Cornwall by the end of the afternoon. Otherwise, plenty of sunshine, North Wales, North Midlands, northwards, and temperatures reaching 8 or 9 Celsius. So a bit colder, but a bit more pleasant with that sunshine replacing the rain for many. Into Tuesday evening, the rain in Cornwall starts to edge north, so affecting much of southwest England and eventually South Wales. And Wednesday's looking like a fairly damp day for the southern two-thirds of the UK, just staying drier and brighter in the far north.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yes, good morning, everybody. It is 10:26. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Muroki on GB News. We're live on your TV, radio, and online this morning. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yes, now you're just about to look at pictures from Belarus, where delegates from Russia and Ukraine are about to hold talks. For those listening to us on radio, we're looking at a broadly empty room at the moment.
Very long table, though.
Yes, where delegates will soon be meeting to discuss what's going on with Russia and Ukraine, and it's expected to focus on achieving an immediate ceasefire and the withdrawal of Russian forces, according to the Ukrainian president. And we'll continue to monitor this throughout the programme, of course, and keep you updated on everything that goes on there.
Yeah, now, just very quickly, at the start, I did ask you all to get in touch about whether or not you wanted or you thought we could be taking in Ukrainian refugees. And I just want to say we are going to go to those shortly, so keep those coming in. I don't want you to think we're ignoring you. That it's really popped off in the inbox at gbviews@gbnews.uk. Don't worry, we will go to your views shortly, should we be taking in Ukrainian refugees. Anyway, moving on. Now, shocking new figures have been released by the Engage Britain charity, reporting that more than 400 staff members have left the National Health Service every single week in order to restore their work-life balance over the last year. Now, around 6 million people are on NHS waiting lists, and, as we previously reported, worker burnout in the sector was mostly down to staff shortages.
That's why Dr. Lawrence Buckman is a GP who sat as chairman of the British Medical Association's General Practitioners Committee between 2007 and 2013, and he joins us now. Good morning, Dr. Lawrence. Is this something we should be shocked about? I mean, what's the turnover on an average sort of pre-pandemic time for people leaving the NHS on an average week?
I couldn't give you the figures on a weekly basis, but we've noticed the gradual fall off in staffing over the last 20 years. Whenever the government has promised more people, what they actually mean is more individuals, but actually those individuals are working shorter and shorter hours because they can't cope with the stress of working longer. And that's been a trend, as I say, for over 20 years. And now it's getting worse because people are leaving before retirement time because they just can't handle it any further.
Yeah, and this comes amid a backdrop of NHS senior managers' pay rising by 65% in the last decade. Is there an imbalance here?
I don't think this is about money. Obviously, more money makes you wish to stay longer.
But more money, sorry to interrupt just quickly, but more money, if we pump that in, could presumably get you more doctors and nurses, couldn't it?
Yes, of course it could. But they're not there to recruit. That's the problem, is that people don't want to work in the NHS as much as they used to. I'm seen as a dinosaur because I liked it, and I still like it. But there are a lot of people who say, why should you work a 60-hour week? Why should you do that? Yeah. And they also say, no amount of money would make me less tired. Why should I do this when I could do something else, earn more money for less work? And I have great sympathy with that because they look at the old attitude to the NHS, which is it belongs to all of us and we should all devote all our energy to it, as something that's from a bygone era. And COVID has made that worse. It isn't the cause, but it's definitely made it much worse.
Do you think NHS staff fundamentally care less about patients than they used to?
No, I think they care more about patients, but they're also aware of they're aware of the danger of going on working when you're so tired you can't think straight because you harm people. And more colleagues are scared that they might hurt somebody by just being unable to think straight at a time when it really matters, which is most of the time. And that applies to all colleagues, whatever they're doing in the health service. They're just worked to a point that they can't give any more, despite the fact that they're being asked to give more. And although money might sweeten it a bit, it wouldn't make you less tired.
Is this explained to them correctly when they are at medical school? Do they have any idea that this is the reality of the situation before they get in there and they're on their first ward on their first day?
I think it's explained to them in words, but you can't really experience it until you've done it properly. And once you do it properly, you suddenly realise what being very tired and still having to make life and death decisions in the middle of the night feels like. You can't tell someone about that because it's just words. It's just like a Charles Dickens novel. It's only real when you actually work it. And that's why we find the numbers of doctors who qualify, who then leave really very quickly after they've qualified, is rising. And that's because they just don't want to do the things that my generation did quite willingly because we didn't work quite as hard as they do.
And of course, the pandemic has contributed to that. But Dr. Lawrence Buckman, we'll leave it there. Thank you for your time this morning on that issue.
Yes, indeed. Right. I think it's time for some views now. We've been threatening to go to your views for quite a while now. Let's actually do it. GBViews at gbnews.uk. I kind of threw the doors open, as it were, at the start of this show to you, the viewer, the listener, anyone watching us online, of course, just to see whether or not you thought that we had some kind of duty, I suppose, in order to take Ukrainian refugees. There are going to be millions of Ukrainian refugees. Yes, we should take them in. For a start, hopefully in the meantime, Putin essentially can be disposed of. That's, of course, Jane's view there. But anyway, yes, we should take the refugees in. This is from Jane, another Jane, there we go, who also says, though, that we should cut down on illegal immigration so that we have more room for these people. That is, of course, her view.
Well, Peter here in Croydon says we have to take in Ukrainian refugees, although not ideal. We have empty office blocks with movable stud walls. This makes adaptation for living accommodation easier. Plumbing is on site. It only takes effort to do it. So some practical suggestions from Peter there, and I would be inclined to agree. Thanks.
Just a very quick one from Jax. Of course we should take in Ukrainian refugees. These are innocent people fleeing war. Instead, we need to stop channel crossings, and he says as well, illegal economic migrants. That's from Jack. Again, that's his view. Keep these coming in. There's loads of these coming through. We're going to go to them throughout the show, so keep them coming. GBViews at gbnews.uk. But after the break, as protests continue across the UK and indeed the world, we'll be asking one organiser what change they're wanting to see. But before that, here's Rosie with the news.
Good morning, it's 10:33. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Ukraine's president has asked the European Union for immediate accession to the EU, as talks are being held today with Moscow on the Belarus border to try to end the conflict. Well, Ukraine faced more heavy fire overnight, with fighting near the city of Mariupol and blasts being heard in Kiev and Kharkiv this morning. The UK Defence Ministry, the Ministry of Defence, says the bulk of Russia's ground forces are said to be around 18 miles north of the capital. Satellite images taken yesterday show a huge military convoy heading towards Kiev. The United Nations nuclear watchdog says missiles have hit a radioactive waste disposal site in the capital of Ukraine overnight. The International Atomic Energy Agency is now monitoring the situation. So far, there's no indication that any radioactive material has been released. The UK is likely to follow the EU's lead in taking Ukrainian refugees for the next 3 years. The chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Tom Tugendhat, says the policy will be reviewed in the coming days. Hundreds of thousands of people are trying to flee the violence. Boris Johnson has already announced immediate family members can join Ukrainians currently living in the UK. Russia's central bank has raised its key interest rate to an unprecedented 20%. It's trying to shore up the ruble, which has fallen now to an all-time low against the dollar following Western sanctions on Moscow. They include the blocking of some Russian banks from the international banking system, SWIFT. You're now up to date here on GB News. We'll do that all day. We're on your TV, online and DAB Plus radio. Shortly, we'll be back to the point.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, it's 10:37 and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Muroki, and Patrick Christys on GB News Live on your TV, radio and online.
We are indeed now. We are looking at pictures from Belarus, I believe, surely, yes, there it is, where Ukrainians and Russians are about to hold talks. It's expected to focus on achieving an immediate ceasefire and the withdrawal of Russian forces. That's according to the Ukrainian president.
Yes, we'll continue to monitor that across the programme. But now, at a protest in London this weekend, members of the public sent out messages of support to the Ukrainian people whilst urging the UK government to allow refugees in the country. Here's what people were saying.
Oh, OK, fair enough. OK, we can't go to that at the moment, but it doesn't matter. Joining us now is actually the organiser, so really, we've gone right to the top anyway. It's Bodan Kypriya, whose name I've just butchered, despite asking you how to pronounce it immediately before. There we are. Please accept my sincerest apologies. But anyway, you're, of course, the former chairman of the Association of Ukrainians as well. And yes, look, I just wanted to ask you, really, about how you feel the kind of response has been from the international community. Do you think that maybe we should do a bit more? What do you reckon?
Well, up to now, I'd say it's been brilliant. Now it's brilliant. it's very good. But actually, we need more. It's hard to say this, but we do need more because we are overwhelmed with sheer numbers and equipment, etc. But we're,
Yeah, your ambassador, I think it was this morning, it might have been late last night, actually said, look, it's all very well and good saying, we'll accept Ukrainian refugees over here, and this has kind of been a theme of the show so far. Actually, what he's saying is, we would like facilities and resources maybe where they could be housed in neighbouring countries with a view that hopefully when it all kind of calms down, if it does, that they can go back. Well, how do you feel about the kind of humanitarian situation that's taking place at the moment?
Well, all wars are humanitarian disasters. I mean, for families, for everybody, and it's a hard thing to say because really, all those people are needed in Ukraine. But the way I understand it right now, it's women and children that are leaving, and the men are going back and fighting. So it's easier for the men to fight knowing that their family is safe.
Yes.
And I'm sure most of them will go back home. I mean, it's a different, because Ukraine is a very nice place to live. It's not some terrible place. It's modern, it's civilized. As you had mentioned before, the Twitter account.
Yes.
Everybody is very IT literate, very well educated. Most of them look like they're middle class.
Yeah.
They're not, but they there's restaurants, and it's anybody that visits Ukraine loved it.
Yeah.
They go back to visit. Some stayed. A lot of Brits stayed.
Yeah.
We're just going to cut back to our Home and Security editor, Mark White, briefly, who is keeping a track of that conference, that meeting that is due to be held now. So let's throw to Mark.
Yes, indeed. That conference, that meeting of the delegations, those peace talks due to get underway any time now. Hopefully we can continue to bring you the images from inside that venue where the delegation is meeting, the delegation from Russia and the delegation also from the Ukraine. They arrived there a little earlier, about an hour or so ago for these talks. And you can see the big long table that is laid out there. Quite how long the talks will last, we don't know. And President Zelensky himself is not holding out a lot of hope that much will be achieved, but he said we've got to try. Clearly, from his point of view, his country has been invaded, lots of areas of Ukraine under attack from Russian forces. So the Russian delegation are there. They had said the precondition for any talks was a Ukrainian surrender. That's clearly not happened at all, quite the opposite. So they've moved their position in that they are willing at least to hold talks. Now, from the Ukrainians' point of view, their immediate call is for there to be a ceasefire, for there to be a withdrawal of Russian troops. I'm not sure that the withdrawal of Russian troops is on the cards, certainly from Vladimir Putin's point of view. But maybe what might come out of today is at least an attempt at a ceasefire to allow more detailed talks to commence between both sides. That would be ideal, of course, as far as the people of Ukraine are concerned, as many of those cities have seen fighting over recent days. So the venue itself, we're still waiting for the delegation to go in. We hope that there is no hitch or hiccup here and that they do come around that table. But everyone, like ourselves, are watching this live shot with interest to see when those formal talks get underway. Now, whether we're actually allowed to continue seeing the live shots when the Peace Summit, as it's being billed, takes place, I'm not so sure. They might order that the live shot, the camera feed, is switched off, and then we just have to wait to see what the outcome of the meeting is. But we've got live images at the moment, and of course everyone will be interested to see when the Russian delegation, when the Ukrainian delegation go in and face each other across that table for the first time since this conflict broke out. As far as the invasion is concerned, well, we know from the military sources here in the UK who've been analysing the intelligence from their assets on the ground, from the satellite imagery, and through talking to their Ukrainian colleagues as well, that there has been not the kind of advances that they were expecting from the Russian military forces, but still some significant gains for the Russians in some key locations as well. So we seem to have lost the imagery from the Ukrainian-Belarusian border at the moment. So we await to find out when this meeting will start and what indeed this delegation will, from either side, will come up with, whether there will be a ceasefire. But for the moment, we'll hand it back to you.
Mark, thank you for that update, and we will keep updated. We will keep you updated on that, our listeners and viewers, as it happens. But now, before Mark White spoke there, we were speaking to Bohdan Chypryna, who's the chairman of the Association of Ukrainians in Great Britain. Former chairman, sorry, apologies. I just want to get your reaction, actually, to what our Home and Security editor, Mark White, was saying there, and what you actually expect to come out of these talks when these two delegations meet, because we know very well that Putin has very clear red lines. We know he doesn't recognise Ukraine's he doesn't think Ukraine has a right to exist as a country in and of itself, and we know his ambitions are quite broad. It's not just sort of Luhansk and Donetsk that he wants to annex. He has broad ambitions. So will these talks really make any difference to those ambitions?
Well, talks are good. I mean, you have to talk. Wars don't last forever. You have to talk. But I don't think the Ukrainian people, I don't know about politicians, but the Ukrainian people, they're not really interested in talks right now. The Russian soldiers that are there, they're bogged down. They're getting frustrated. They've started firing in the last few hours onto civilian buildings. They're shelling buildings now because they're frustrated. They're not achieving what they were supposed to achieve. So I really don't know. A ceasefire would be great. But is it going to happen? I don't believe whatever Putin says, I wouldn't believe anyway. I mean, he said he wasn't going to invade. I mean, it's been lies after lies, and this is going on for years. I mean, it's not a new phenomenon. People are surprised. The only newness to this situation is that Ukraine is starting to stand up for itself.
Yeah.
And that is the key. And when Ukraine unites the way it is, it's totally united. With our rally yesterday at Trafalgar Square, it was packed, but everybody was almost breathing in unison. You know, that it's hard to explain. It's the energy that they're all united. And that not only included Ukrainians. We had Russians there, actual ethnic Russians. We had all kinds of nationalities, Polish, and everybody is united because I think subconsciously everybody understands what a threat Putin is. I mean, he's worse than 21st century Hitler. I mean,
Okay. I'm not convinced a lot of the Russian soldiers knew that they were launching a full-scale invasion. I think some of the clips that we've seen online appear to suggest anyway that they weren't necessarily completely sure that they were actually all going to war. I think it's become quite obvious now, hasn't it? But in terms of the Ukrainian situation at the moment, what do you know about what's happening right now on the ground? Have you got family over there, I take it?
Well, I've got some family. I had no contact with the family. I know basically what everybody knows because Ukraine is very IT literate. You know, they're all on Twitter, they're all on Instagram, and ordinary citizens are filming what's happening. So the picture is that it's not going swimmingly for Putin. He's actually bogged down, and he's actually losing.
Which does mean that there could be even more of a threat, because obviously, as you've alluded to there, you know, if he gets bogged down, he gets frustrated, he gets angry, goodness only knows what that nutter could do. Anyway, but thank you very, very much for joining us. It's been fantastic to have you on the show, and good luck, obviously,
thank you very much.
Going forward there. Bohdan Chypryna, who, of course, was the former chairman of the Association of Ukrainians in Great Britain.
Yes, now moving on to something more domestic. The Beacon Tree Estate in Dagenham, East London, is the largest council estate in the UK. With more than 27,000 homes, the estate itself is 100 years old and was founded as social housing for people moving away from the slums in the East End.
Now, our London reporter Alice Porter was out and about finding out what topics, stories and headlines matter most to those living in Beacon Tree Estate. Alice, fantastic stuff. Good. I like this idea. It's great. What do you find out then? Come on, hit us.
Good morning. Yeah, it has been such a joy to come round this estate that is brimming with just so much history. I mean, there's the scale of it, for one thing. I mean, it goes on for 4 miles, 27,000 homes, and it's not just the largest council estate in the UK, it's actually the largest one in Europe. And the history of it is just so fascinating. It was very much an initiative by Lloyd George back in the 1920s to provide good accommodation for veterans after World War I. So it's really, really interesting in terms of the social housing and the people who are living here. I was one guy I was speaking to earlier who was sent here at the World War II when he was sort of bombed out of the East End. That's what's so interesting, is so many people who have grown up here were people who were either had been moved from very much sort of the slums of the East End or had been moved here during World War II if they had been bombed out of the area. And when they came here, we may think of some of the East End like Dagenham, maybe we might not think of it as so green, but actually when it sort of first came fruition, having this type of social housing, everyone just said it was just so green with so many parks everywhere. So it's a really really incredible initiative of its day, and it's been wonderful speaking to so many people here. I think one thing that has really struck me though is a lot of people say how much it has changed over the last 50 years or so. As you're saying, this is over 100 years old. I mean, there was one man I was speaking to earlier who's been here since 1943, so my goodness me, how things have changed. And I think one thing people keep saying to me is you used to see kids out in the street playing and you just don't see that anymore. And I think that's probably indicative of a much wider issue in the way society has changed. It's also become much more multicultural, and again, it depends who you speak to. There are some people I spoke to who said they feel like it's less cohesive as a community than it used to be, and there are others who are saying it's absolutely fantastic having such a variety of people living here, and they absolutely love it.
Brilliant stuff, Alex. I like this. I think it's a fantastic idea just to really get right into the heart of the communities. This is what we're supposed to be about, isn't it? Going out and talking to people and getting their opinions on stuff, real people, as it were. So thank you very, very much, Alice. Great to have you on the show. Alice Porter there, of course, basically going out and chatting to you, which I think is a really nice thing to do, to be honest with you. But we're going to go straight in with some views. I
was just going to say, Alice mentioned there one of the people have been in their council home since, 1940-something, I think she said. Yeah, something like that, she said. And I've heard stories in Ukraine of people who've been in their homes, older people who've been in their homes for decades and are now being forced out. And it's really tragic, especially for older people who are just seeing, I mean, they've been used to this kind of thing for a long time, I suppose, the conflicts with Russia. But it's tragic how people are being forced out of their homes, and the number of civilian deaths is really tragic as well.
Yeah, it is, really. But we're going to go into this inbox now, GBViews at gbnews.uk. Thank you, everyone who's been getting in touch. I know I say this a lot, but it is because you guys keep beating your previous record for most emails in a particular show, and it's up there at the moment. I asked right at the start whether or how you felt, really, about the idea of taking in Ukrainian refugees. Yes, we should take them in. They are refugees escaping a war zone, but we should return the thousands coming across the channel. That's one person's view, of course. We've had Mick also get in touch saying we should give financial assistance to Poland to facilitate the Ukrainian refugees. The people will want to stay near to their homeland, to return to their homes, belongings and families, etc. It's not sustainable to accept, I think he means, masses of Ukrainians to come to the United Kingdom, and that's Mick's view. There's a real range in this. A lot of you are just going completely like, yeah, look, absolutely, 100%, and a lot of you are saying no, we haven't got the resources for it, and it is an interesting debate, of course.
Sandy here in Buckingham says, unless. I think she's in Buckingham. I agree that we should... she said, Mercy, I've always agreed with you on most things, but don't like hearing that you don't think we're full. I agree that we should take in genuine refugees, especially those involved in war, but we need to stop the illegal immigration. She says we're an island and have a very large population already clambering for school places. Do you base your opinion on the few green spaces we have. What I would say to that is the fact that schools are, which they are, they're very overcrowded, and obviously our NHS is falling apart. That's not a problem. That's a problem with the state failing to keep up with funding these institutions, funding education, funding the NHS, or the NHS not using its money properly. Because, you know, the reality is people come to this country legally at a net rate of 300,000 people every year. So you can't on one hand say, you know, not have a problem with legal migration, which is 300,000 people, and then say, you know,
is that a problem with our immigration system as well? Then I get what absolutely.
If we have room, what I'm saying is, if we have room for 300,000 legal migrants every year, that's net. That's a net figure. Then of course we have room for 20,000 odd refugees. So I mean, you can't have it both ways. Either you have a problem with all numbers of immigration, even legal migration, or you know, you don't have a problem with it at all.
Okay, all right, interesting. I'd take every single one of the Ukrainian refugees. That's from Terry. Terry again, comparing with the situation that's going on in the Channel. It is interesting when it comes down to just purely a question of resources. One of the reasons why I asked this question, really. I can get the fact that obviously, you know, well, there's a moral, in my opinion, there is a moral duty here when it comes to the Ukrainian people, right? So that's where I'm at, just full transparency with it. I can also see the side of it, which is if we are paying millions and millions and millions of pounds a day to, not just with the people coming over the Channel, but because that is a small percentage of illegal immigration into this country, or indeed immigration into this country. But we are putting a lot of them in hotels. We are putting them in hotels because we don't have enough social housing. And then if you then add on top of that a huge influx of other people, does this lay bare one of the reasons maybe why, if we hadn't have been such a soft touch for such a long time, we would now be able to absolutely throw the doors open to people? Maybe this is just another example of actually, is it the responsible thing to do to have a stronger immigration system or asylum system so that you have more room for manoeuvre when there is an out-and-out humanitarian crisis taking place? Again, with just throwing this over to you, GBViews, gbnews.uk.
Yes, well, keep all your thoughts coming into us on our email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We want to hear all of them, even the ones that disagree with us. And we will
less of those, though. Less of those.
We will be back with more of your views and top stories after this break.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A wet day for many of us, particularly for Wales, northern and western England, where the rain will be heavy at times. Showers following for parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland in the colder air behind this cold front that's crossing the country at the moment. And ahead of the cold front, East Anglia in the southeast staying largely dry, if rather cloudy, and fairly mild through the rest of Monday. But it's really across central, northern and western England where we've got the rain. Wales as well, and the rain turning heavier and more persistent, particularly across parts of Wales, southwest England, north and northwest England. Scotland, Northern Ireland feeling colder as showers follow, those showers falling as snow above 300 metres. But there will be some brighter spells away from the showers, and the rain doesn't quite reach East Anglia in the southeast until after dark. It then pushes through, and we keep the rain going into the southeast through the night. But it clears elsewhere, clear spells, and with lighter winds, a touch of frost in many northern and western parts of the UK, dipping to around freezing or just below for Scotland, Northern Ireland and northern England, but staying up at 7 or 8 Celsius in the southeast, where it will be a dull and damp start with that rain clinging on right the way through much of the day, really, for the far southeast. It eases elsewhere before another spell of rain moves into parts of Cornwall by the end of the afternoon. Otherwise, plenty of sunshine, North Wales, North Midlands, northwards, and temperatures reaching 8 or 9 Celsius. So a bit colder, but a bit more pleasant with that sunshine replacing the rain for many. Into Tuesday evening, the rain in Cornwall starts to edge north, so affecting much of southwest England and eventually South Wales. And Wednesday's looking like a fairly damp day for the southern two-thirds of the UK, just staying drier and brighter in the far north.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Muroki, and Patrick Christys. We're live on your TV, radio and online, and we're here for another hour with the top stories, including the latest lines on the invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah, make sure you get in touch with your views as usual, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll be getting stuck into those throughout the show, but first it's time for your latest headlines.
Good morning, it's 11 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Ukraine's president has asked the European Union to fast-track his country's membership application to join the EU. Volodymyr Zelensky's plea comes as representatives from Ukraine and Russia meet today on the Belarusian border. Ukraine says the talks will focus on securing an immediate ceasefire and the withdrawal of Russian forces from Ukraine.
We address the European Union to admit Ukraine immediately according to the new special procedure. We are grateful to the partners that they stand with us, but our goal is to be with all Europeans and, most importantly, to be equal. I'm sure that's fair. I'm sure we deserved it. I'm sure it is possible.
We'll keep you up to date on the progress of those talks. Now, Ukraine faced more heavy fire overnight as it entered day 5 of the conflict, with fighting near the city of Mariupol and blasts being heard in Kiev and Kharkiv this morning. The UK Ministry of Defence says the bulk of Russia's ground forces are said to be around 18 miles north of the capital. Satellite images taken yesterday show a huge military convoy heading towards Kiev. The Russian news agency Interfax claims 2 towns in the southeast of the country have been captured. Now, meanwhile, the Ukrainian military has released footage which it says is a Russian missile system being destroyed by a drone strike. Ukraine says the BUK missile launcher was targeted in the city of Malyn, about 60 miles northwest of the capital. The Ukrainian MP Oleksiy Gorencharko told GB News the country needs help protecting its skies.
We are not looking for, for boots on our ground. We are ready to fight ourselves. And we don't ask British people, American people to fight for us. But we ask you to help us to protect the skies. Because the Russians are using aircrafts and missiles to hit residential houses, kindergartens, hospitals, schools.
Well, there have been some calls for foreigners with combat experience to join the fight with Ukraine. But the Armed Forces Minister, James Heappey, says British citizens should really think twice about going.
War is brutal. It's not the sort of thing that you
jump on a plane to go and do for the fun of it. The people that you are seeing picking up Kalashnikov rifles in Kyiv today are doing so because they face an existential threat and they are desperate, and that is inspirational. But I don't think we should be encouraging British citizens to go to Ukraine.
The Prime Minister is chairing a cabinet meeting this morning. Britain has now joined the US and the EU in banning financial transactions with the Russian Central Bank, the Finance Ministry and Wealth Fund. Effectively, that cuts Moscow off from Western financial markets. Well, the government is also fast-tracking legislation to stop dirty money being laundered through the UK's property market. The Kremlin has revealed plans to retaliate against Western sanctions on Russia's aviation industry and says the guiding principle will be reciprocity. Russia's central bank has more than doubled its key interest rate to an unprecedented 20%. It's trying to shore up the ruble, which has now fallen to an all-time low against the dollar after sanctions were imposed against Moscow. They include the blocking of some Russian banks from the international banking system, SWIFT. The UK is likely to follow the EU's lead in taking Ukrainian refugees for the next 3 years, as hundreds of thousands flee the country in the wake of the invasion. The chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Tom Tugendhat, says the policy will be reviewed in the coming days. Boris Johnson has already announced immediate family members can join Ukrainians currently living in the UK. Anna Dzek from the Association of Ukrainians in Great Britain says the UK should open its doors to those fleeing conflict.
I'm actually the daughter of someone who was welcomed by Great Britain after the Second World War, who built the Ukrainian community in Coventry. Britain welcomed refugees then from war-torn Germany, where they had been slave workers. And we want the same now.
In other news closer to home, COVID restrictions are being eased in Scotland today. Mandatory vaccine passports for nightclubs, concerts and football matches are being scrapped. Students and teachers no longer have to wear masks in the classroom. They do still have to wear them in communal areas, and distancing rules will still apply. We're keeping you up to date here on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's return to the point.
Yes, morning everyone. Now, talks have just got underway in Belarus between Ukraine and Russian delegates. Let's get the latest now from our security editor, Mark White.
Well, we've been waiting all morning for that, for those talks to get underway on the Belarusian-Russian border near the city of Gomel, I should say, the Ukrainian border near the city of Gomel. The delegation have arrived there. We were seeing shots a little earlier of the venue where the delegation is talking, the Russian side and the Ukrainian side. We saw the images of them coming off a helicopter as well before heading to that venue. Big long table there where both sides meeting and discussing across the table there now. They have arrived at the venue and begun these ceasefire talks, or at least that is the hope and ambition, I think, certainly from the Ukrainian point of view, of getting an immediate ceasefire. Now, the Jerusalem Post is also reporting that the Chelsea owner, Roman Abramovich, is partly behind the brokering of these ceasefire talks, and he is there, according to the Jerusalem Post, at the request of the government in Kiev, of the Ukrainian government. Now, we have no way of independently verifying that at the moment, but that is being reported by a reputable news organisation, the Jerusalem Post. So the talks are underway. As I say, the Ukrainians are hoping that at the very least they can get a ceasefire, although the Ukrainian President Zelensky said that at the end of the day, he did not believe that much would materialise from these talks. But I think the very fact that they're talking has to be welcomed on the fifth day of this conflict, with significant loss of life on the ground and many Ukrainian cities having been attacked by Russian forces. In terms of what the UK government is doing, that they've been sending weapons across to Ukraine, including shoulder-launched missiles. We have been told that James Cleverly, the Armed Forces Minister, the Foreign Affairs Minister, has tweeted images of Ukrainian soldiers with 2 of those shoulder-launched missiles that were provided by Britain to the Ukrainian government. In terms of other systems, there are drones that have been provided by Turkey, which the Ukrainians have been using. Clearly, Russia doesn't have complete air superiority because those drones, according to the Ukrainian military, and these are images released by that military, they say they've taken out a Buk missile launcher on the ground, a large explosion as a missile is seen striking what appears to be a missile launcher on the ground. That, as I say, is unverified by us, but it is coming from an official source in terms of the Ukrainian chief of the defence staff, the Ukrainian military account that it has been tweeted out from. And the latest from our Ministry of Defence, looking at satellite imagery of the area, is that the main armoured column of Russian forces is now about 18 miles or so from the capital, Kiev. It's a long convoy, about 3 miles long, hundreds of vehicles, including tanks, armoured personnel carriers, other transport vehicles, fuel tankers, and other logistical supply vehicles as well, making its way. It was, when the images were taken by the satellite, about 40 miles from Kiev. It's now reported to be about 18 miles from the Ukrainian capital. And all the time, of course, that the fighting continues without a ceasefire. The refugees are spilling across the border into neighbouring countries. The UNHCR, the High Commission for Refugees, is reporting that more than 400,000 refugees have already spilled over the border into countries such as Poland, Romania, Slovakia, and other nations in that area. And there are something like 7 million internally displaced people in the country as well. So if the fighting continues, they fully expect that more refugees will spill over the border. But the breaking news from us at this hour is that those talks on the Ukrainian-Belarusian border have commenced. Both sides now in the meeting room. We believe it is the Russian embassy in Gomel. Talks that are being attended, according to the Jerusalem Post, by Roman Abramovich at the request of the authorities in Kiev, the Ukrainian capital. No way of confirming that yet. We are trying to bottom that out, but that is coming from the Jerusalem Post at this hour.
Yeah, Mark, thank you very much. Great to have all of that update. And of course, we'll bring you the latest throughout the show as those talks, I mean, as Mark said there, actually, rumoured anyway to have been kind of brokered, or certainly involving Roman Abramovich, the Chelsea owner, or former Chelsea owner, depending on what day of the week he decides it is. But anyway, we'll keep you abreast of that entire situation. Now, before we get stuck into the final hour of this programme, properly anyway, Mercy is going to do one of her epic monologues, and it's her views on the potential release of John Venables, of course, the man who murdered toddler James Bulger in 1993.
What is happening in Ukraine is, as it rightly should be, at the top of the news agenda right now. It speaks to fundamental questions of freedom, rights and public safety across the world and very much here at home. But I do think it's also important to remind ourselves that there are very real domestic issues happening around us that should be deeply concerning. The list is endless, sadly, and it's only going to grow in 2022. But let me give you one of those things that caught my eye, which really concerns me, especially as a parent. Over the weekend, the father of murdered toddler James Bulger made a desperate plea to the parole board to not release one of his son's killers. John Venables, as Venables makes his last bid for freedom to the parole board. Along with his friend, Robert Thompson, Venables tortured and killed 2-year-old James Bulger after kidnapping him from a shopping centre in 1993. The pair were 10 years old at the time. They became the youngest people jailed for murder in 250 years in this country when they were found guilty. Now, many people in Britain will be very familiar with this story. It was one that shook the nation. But the fact that John Venables now has a prospect of freedom repulses me. And to explain why, it's worth recapping a few facts. Venables, along with Thompson, was released from a Young Offenders Institute under licence in 2001, both with new identities, of course, at the taxpayer's expense. In fact, Venables' identity has changed twice after he told friends he was a murderer, and apparently it had to be changed to protect the killer from violence against him. In 2008, Venables had a drunken brawl and was found in possession of cocaine. He was only given a caution. And here's the crux of it all. 2 years later, in 2010, Venables was sent back to jail for having child abuse images on his laptop. He was released after a pathetic 3 years and given a new identity. Why? Because the parole board recommended his release. But guess what? In 2017, he was recalled to prison after yet again being caught with child abuse images. He was jailed in early 2018 after he admitted to possessing over 1,000 indecent images of children. Now, I know Venables was only 10 when he committed his initial crime of murdering James Bulger, but my opinion is this. The man has proven that even in adulthood, he is a danger to children. It's my view that some people are just so depraved, so evil, that the only fair and just outcome is for them to spend the rest of their life behind bars. This monster has cost the public around £5 million already to bring him to justice, to give him a new identity, 2 new identities, and to keep him safe. But the cost to little James Bulger's family is immeasurable, and the cost to public safety if his latest bid to be released is accepted is unspeakable. Ralph Bulger, James Bulger's dad, spoke out last week and said this about Venables, and I quote, "He's a convicted paedophile murderer with an insatiable lust for children. He simply can't stop himself. If this monster is released, he will abuse and kill again." Now, I'm not willing to take the risk to find out if Ralph Bulger is wrong. So, as we focus on international affairs in this moment and feel anger and outrage at the injustices being perpetrated abroad by murderous monsters, let's not forget that we have our own monsters here at home and a justice system which often proves itself to be also deserving of the utmost anger and outrage.
Yeah, it's again, isn't it? What's the point? What's the point of releasing someone? If you have these people who are a real and present danger, who's shown to be a real and present danger, why take the risk? And I know I wheel out this line all the time, but I do really think it's one of the most important points, which is that would you, as a member of that parole board, like that guy living next door to you? Would you like him living next door to one of your children, to whoever?
Yeah.
Well, if the answer to that is no, then I'm sorry, but he shouldn't come and live next to me or Mercy or anyone.
I wouldn't be happy with him living in the same solar system as
No,
me, let alone,
yeah.
Being my next door neighbour. And nobody would, because who wants a murderous, criminal who has twice had been arrested and convicted of having indecent child abuse images on his app? Who would want that person in society, which... time and time again, we have these conversations about some of the failures in our criminal justice system, some of the people who are let out again after being obviously a danger. Colin Pitchfork being one infamous one from a few months ago. I'm just starting to wonder, what on earth is the parole board up to? Who are these people who are recommending for these monsters to be released from prison after they've time and time again proven that they cannot function in a civil way in society? And the people that get hurt are the most vulnerable, often children or often young women. And it's just absurd at this point. I really think that people who deal drugs or take drugs or, commit motoring offences get more sometimes than people who actually kill children and abuse children.
Well, they do. I mean, I know people and know of people as well who have been found outside a nightclub with, some drugs in their pocket or something like that, who have, as a result, lost their job, got a criminal record, cannot now travel abroad, etc., etc. It's a place like America and places like that. And you've got a bloke here who killed a toddler, is a serial paedophile, and was caught in possession of cocaine after a fight outside a pub. So you can imagine there was some elements of assault or whatever apparently involved in that as well, and was let off for that incident with a caution, and now could well be released again. I mean, this is insane.
And on top of all of that, a new identity and lifelong anonymity as well, which is actually a very rare thing, because often when children commit crimes, they get anonymity until they're 18, at which point the public are allowed to know who they are. They were actually granted a very exceptional lifelong anonymity, which means we, as the public, will never have a right to actually publicly name them according to their new identities. It's just...
But isn't that a massive red flag? If someone has committed a crime or a series of crimes so awful that they need protection and lifelong anonymity to save them from the British public, should they be allowed back out into the British public, realistically? What do you think? GBNews, gbnews.uk. Caroline, by the way, has been in touch, completely agreeing with you, as I think anyone with a brain will. John Venables should never, ever be released. A parole board are not fit for purpose. He should be left to rot in jail. There's a lot of these coming in. We'll go to them throughout the show.
Yes, but after the break, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, has promised to arm foreign volunteers to travel to his country to join the battle against Vladimir Putin's forces. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss says she would back the move. Why would you travel to fight for Ukraine? Let us know. We'll be back with more of that in just a few minutes.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A wet day for many of us, particularly for Wales, northern and western England, where the rain will be heavy at times. Showers following for parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland in the colder air behind this cold front that's crossing the country at the moment. And ahead of the cold front, East Anglia in the southeast staying largely dry, if rather cloudy, and fairly mild through the rest of Monday. But it's really across central, northern and western England where we've got the rain. Wales as well, and the rain turning heavier and more persistent, particularly across parts of Wales, southwest England, north and northwest England. Scotland, Northern Ireland feeling colder as showers follow, those showers falling as snow above 300 metres. But there will be some brighter spells away from the showers, and the rain doesn't quite reach East Anglia in the southeast until after dark. It then pushes through, and we keep the rain going into the southeast through the night. But it clears elsewhere, clear spells, and with lighter winds, a touch of frost in many northern and western parts of the UK, dipping to around freezing or just below for Scotland, Northern Ireland and northern England, but staying up at 7 or 8 Celsius in the southeast, where it will be a dull and damp start with that rain clinging on right the way through much of the day, really, for the far southeast. It eases elsewhere before another spell of rain moves into parts of Cornwall by the end of the afternoon. Otherwise, plenty of sunshine, North Wales, North Midlands, northwards, and temperatures reaching 8 or 9 Celsius, so a bit colder, but a bit more pleasant with that sunshine replacing the rain for many. Into Tuesday evening, the rain in Cornwall starts to edge north, so affecting much of southwest England and eventually South Wales. And Wednesday's looking like a fairly damp day for the southern two-thirds of the UK, just staying drier and brighter in the far north.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube. You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you The Briefing live from 9:30 a.m. The stories, analysis, and live debate that you need to hear.
Quite right, Tom, of course.
Was this something that has been considered at all?
Difficult to answer.
Gas-guzzling helicopters circling. Noise is being made here. Joe Biden walking out. Thank you very much for joining us. Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. on GB News.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it, Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. It's just about to go 10:25. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys and Mercy Muroki on GB News Live, as always, on your TV, radio and online.
Yes, now Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has called for foreign fighters to volunteer and travel to his country to take up arms in the battle against Russian enemy forces.
Well, when Foreign Secretary Liz Truss was asked if she would support UK citizens making that decision, she told the BBC, I do support that. And of course, that is something that people can make of their own decisions about. It's interesting stuff, this, actually, really, isn't it? I mean, I've been amazed, or I've often thought, actually, whether or not people would be wanting to fight for this country if it all came to it, and whether or not now we're witnessing some Brits, I suppose, maybe about to go and fight for Ukraine. But Phil Campion joins us. He's a retired SAS trooper who served in Northern Ireland, the Balkans, West Africa. He's done loads of stuff, frankly, all over the world. Actually, he joins us now. Phil, how are you?
I'm all right, buddy. You all right? You good?
Yeah, very well, thank you, mate. Very well. Just look, what do you think about this idea of, I suppose, maybe Brits going out and fighting for Ukraine?
Nobody likes a bully, do they? And Putin is making a massive bully of himself at the moment. He's making a fool of himself as well, I might add. But, yeah, he's not endearing himself to a lot of people. And, you know, my phone hasn't stopped this week with guys asking me for advice of, you know, think I should go, Do you know what I mean? So, it's a real thing. And guys will travel over there, I've got no doubt.
Well, yeah, the Foreign Office and the Foreign Secretary has said it's not that they're encouraging people to go, but it's not illegal to go over there, and they will support people if they do. Do you think, I know you mentioned some people have already asked you for advice, but I get the feeling that what we're seeing in Ukraine with all these people coming out and willing to fight for their country, if that happened in Britain, I'm not sure many young men I know would have the cojones to do the same.
Do you know what? I had this conversation with my grandson the other day, funnily enough, and he said to me, do you think they're going to call me up? Do you think I'll get called up? Because I don't want to go. And I said, well, to be fair, if you don't want to go, they don't want you anyway. You know what I mean? So you only want guys who are willing to fight.
Yeah. Do you think we're witnessing a bit of that at the moment? Because there are, look, you can never verify. It's very difficult to verify a lot of what you see on Twitter, of course it is. So we don't want to get sucked into some kind of propaganda war here. But at the same time, there does appear to be numerous videos and pictures of Russian soldiers who don't really seem particularly up for it. Either they weren't told necessarily the full scale of what they were supposed to be doing out there, or they just didn't fancy it. Do you think we're seeing a bit of that?
I think we're seeing lots of that. I think we're seeing some conscript soldiers who didn't realise that they were going to be put into a fight with people that actually were going to fight back. And that's what we're seeing. Forget what the mainstream media are like. Some of the reporting's been shocking, by the way. Do you know what I mean? What I'm watching on Sky and what I'm watching on BBC, a lot of it's based around assumption and that sort of stuff. What is actually happening over there at the moment is Putin is using tactics which are outdated in a style which is outdated with his troops, i.e. conscription and all that sort of stuff. it's not working for him. It's not working. It seriously isn't working for him. And I think he's heavily underestimated how much resistance he was going to meet.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly looks that way from what we can gather so far. So if you were advising people who want to go out there, presumably you'd say, look, only go out there and fight if you've had some form of military experience. You wouldn't, I mean, I imagine I'd be pretty useless.
I don't know, mate. You seem quite up for it for me. No, my advice to everybody has always been very clear. Understand what your skill sets are before you offer them to somebody else. All right? Don't go and punch above your weight. Don't go strolling in there, you know, thinking you're going to be Audie Murphy on a good day out if you're not Audie Murphy on a good day out. Do you know what I'm saying? Because you will come unstuck. But if you have got the right skill sets and you do feel like you could offer these people the support that they deserve, then feel free, fill your boots, off you go. I'm sure they won't turn you down. In fact, I'm sure they'll open arms for you, bring you in.
Do you fancy it?
I'm on the fence at the moment. I don't know if they actually need Big Phil out there, but if they do, he'll be on his way.
No, absolutely. And look, just to kind of summarise really the situation at the moment, the state of play. You've mentioned there about Putin's outdated tactics. What are they? You've spoken about conscription, fine, but I mean,
right,
yeah.
His doctrine, as it were, was basically to choose 2 or 3 entry points, throw his troops in there, divide his troops up, throw them at the entry point. Where they stuck, he sent more to bolster them up. Where they failed, he's just left them to fail. Okay, it's old-fashioned. It's basically breaking in by trial and error. I mean, what did he take? Took Chernobyl to start off with. He did all right there. He put one, but he lost that airport, didn't go back and bother with it. So basically, he teased some of his troops up to failure from the very start. It's not very well thought out. It's old-fashioned. It relies on heavy amounts of backup, which he hasn't got, by the way. Do you know what I mean? If you look at his GDP and all that sort of stuff, he ain't got the money to go into a battle for this period of time. I think he's getting it all wrong. You know, and when he upped the ante with this footage you're showing the other day, his 2 generals are sat there thinking, boss, are you really doing this? You're off your mind.
Yeah, what do you reckon about that? The nuclear threat, as it were, the implication that he's, I suppose, at least preparing for or acknowledging there might be some element of nuclear war. Do you buy that, or do you think we're just witnessing a bloke now who has lost it?
Now, I think we're witnessing a guy here now who's displaying the signs of someone who's terminally ill, to be honest. You know what I mean? But he's the bully that walked into the playground, pushed the kid, got pushed back, and now he's trying to push it for something else because he's realised that nobody in the playground likes him. You know what I mean? So he's sort of like, it's a real bully who's getting some back at the moment because he's in lots of areas where he thought he wasn't going to, he's getting his backside handed back to him, isn't he? You know, even his own people are pouring out onto the streets in Russia and going up and opposing what he's doing. He's on lose, lose, lose everywhere he looks. He needs to eat some humble pie, go down to the border, negotiate a bit of a deal for himself and try and walk away as best from this he can. Otherwise, he looks like he's just piling in on every front. Even the Chinese don't look interested in him anymore. Do you know what I mean?
And that's probably for the best. But Phil Campion, thank you for joining us this morning, retired SAS trooper there. But let's go to some of your views. Lots of views coming in about, of course, that big story of the last few days, really, Ukraine. 2 conflicting views here. Carol says we most definitely should welcome refugees if they want to come here, although a lot of people have been asked to come, but either said no because they want to, of course, be at home. She says she'd welcome Ukrainian people with open arms. On the other hand, Kerry has got in touch and she says she's sick and tired of being the world's charity. So probably not as inclined to let too many refugees in.
There are very much so a range of views on this particular issue. And also it's conflated as well, isn't it? Because people are looking at it in context. You know, our existing levels of immigration, both legal and illegal. And the most visible sign of that, of course, has been what's going on, or has been going on in the Channel for a couple of years now. And the amounts of money that we're spending, not just on that, but it's a good kind of case study, I suppose, but on immigration as a whole and illegal immigration as a whole. So we're kind of playing it in the round, aren't we, really? What's happening here is not as simple as, well, should we just accept Ukrainian refugees? It's a bigger picture, isn't it? And again, I've said it before, I'll say it again now. I do wonder if there are some people sitting here today with a bit of egg on their face thinking, actually, if we had run a bit of a tighter ship for decades, frankly, we might be more inclined to respond or more able to respond when a genuine, proper, huge humanitarian crisis rears its head. But it's great to have all your views on there. And there are also a lot of views to what you were speaking about before. Just very quickly, you gave a monologue about John Venables, of course, the killer of James Bulger, up for parole. And yeah, people are saying, who are these people who decide to put such a vile monster back on our streets? He should get life without release. And that's from Susan. So there we go.
Absolutely. But now, after the break, we move closer to home with our Wales reporter, Lily Hewitson, who gives us the latest on the COVID restrictions there. But before that, a look at this morning's news.
Good morning, it's 11:33. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Efforts to broker an immediate ceasefire are underway, with delegations from Ukraine and Russia meeting in Belarus. Kiev hopes the talks will also lead to a withdrawal of Russian forces from the country. The President, Volodymyr Zelensky, has asked the European Union to fast-track Ukraine's application for membership.
We address the European Union to admit Ukraine immediately according to the new special procedure. We are grateful to the partners that they stand with us, but our goal is to be with all Europeans and, most importantly, to be equal. I'm sure that's fair. I'm sure we deserved it. I'm sure it is possible.
The UK Ministry of Defence says the bulk of Russia's ground forces are said to be around 18 miles north of Ukraine's capital. Satellite images taken yesterday show a huge military convoy heading towards Kiev. The United Nations Refugee Agency says more than 500,000 people have now fled Ukraine. It follows news that the UK is likely to follow the EU's lead in taking refugees from the country for the next 3 years. Boris Johnson has announced that immediate family members can join Ukrainians currently living within Great Britain. Russia's central bank has raised its key interest rate to an unprecedented 20%. Well, they're trying to shore up the ruble, which has fallen to an all-time low against the dollar following Western sanctions on Moscow. They include the blocking of some Russian banks from the international banking system, SWIFT. You're now up to date here on GB News. We're on your TV, online and DAB+ radio. Shortly, we'll be back to the point.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yes, well, good morning, everybody. It's 11:37. There we go. Got a very small clock here that I can just about see. But anyway, this is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Muroki as well.
Who has lost the scroller.
Oh, good stuff. Yes. No, we run a tight ship here.
I was trying to play it off. I was like, uh-oh.
Patrick, just fill for 10.5 minutes. Just fill for 10.5 minutes.
Apologies.
Okay. Apologies. Right. No worries. Anyway, as you can tell, we're very much live on your TV, radio, and online.
We are. Now, the Archbishop of Canterbury has confessed that he is failing to lure in more worshippers to the Church of England as congregation numbers hit record lows. He has previously admitted that he has concerns for the future of the church in an increasingly secular age.
Yes, indeed. He said that he sometimes wonders whether he will be the one who, quote, finish the Church of England off. Gosh, keep it light, mate. As numbers dwindle and churches continue to close at record rate. So with all this happening around us, can Britain still be called a Christian country?
Yes, well, Caroline Farrow is Catholic journalist and commentator and joins us now, and she sits alongside, well, on our screens anyway, Calvin Robinson, who I believe you're in training, aren't you, Calvin, to become, is it a priest? Is priest the right term?
I am, which is why I probably shouldn't be laughing at Patrick saying he's got a very small clock. But I am training for the priesthood at the moment.
No comment.
Look, this is a highbrow show, okay, and I will find you at the pub at some point and make you pay for that comment. Anyway, right, okay. In light of the Archbishop's comments, I mean, you couldn't make this up, could you? Right, are we still a Christian country? And I'm going to go to you very first, Calvin. I see you've got a massive clock behind you there.
We are very much still a Christian country, despite the best efforts of the Archbishop of Canterbury and the people with him in the hierarchy. The problem is the church has gone entirely woke. We're much more likely to hear a sermon on climate change, on Brexit, or on the latest political argument than we are on Jesus Christ, our Lord and Saviour, in the Church of England at the moment. That is the problem with it, fundamentally. But the country itself and the people tend to be very Christian. I know Caroline's going to speak shortly, but I recommend people look at her pinned tweet about praying for Ukraine. And it's all about the power of prayer. This is something that we can all do, no matter how lost we feel or how helpless we feel to such an enormous global crisis that we're seeing at the moment. And that's what our faith brings us, as well as important things like forgiveness and repentance. And, especially in this current climate of wokeness where we're seeing people be cancelled for having the wrong opinion, we can lead with a better example and say, well, we might say things that people disagree with, but we can apologise if we're wrong, and we can accept and forgive people for making mistakes and move on as a people. Not everything has to be us versus them. Not everything has to be divisive. And I think that those values of faith, hope, and love are what Christianity brings to this country and makes it a better place.
Well, Caroline, let me throw to you. In the last census, so the 2021 census, 51% of people ticked Christianity as their religion. In 2001, this was 71%. And also more than half of young people say they're atheists. So can we really call ourselves a Christian country anymore when the majority of people really don't identify with Christianity?
I would agree with you. And although I really respect, it's wonderful to hear Calvin's inspirational words about Christian values. I don't think that in the UK we are actually a Christian country. I think if we are Christian, it's kind of in name only. We're kind of Anglican in name only because we've still got these sort of Anglican strictures sort of embedded in we don't have a constitution, but we have bishops in the House of Lords. We're still sort of administratively kind of a Christian country. But I think actually we're far more of a post-Christian country in that we are a country on which we have Judeo-Christian foundations, but you ask most people, are you Christian? And they will probably say no. And I see this on the ground when I talk about, say, what used to be mainstream Christian values. If I want to talk about, say, sex and sexuality, then that's immediately deemed hateful. You can't say these sorts of things. You hate people, particularly on issues of sex, sexuality and gender. Of course, there is a lot more to Christianity than those issues. But I think we have moved a very, very long way. And, we see this when, in Finland, I mean, and clearly, Finland's not the UK, but there's a test case going on in Europe at the moment where a politician is being tried for hate speech because she has quoted verses from the Bible. And I think, sadly, we are very much moving that way.
No, indeed. Calvin, just to throw back to you, really, have we done enough in this country to actually preserve Christianity? When you look around, and certainly the area where I grew up, for example, a large Muslim population, a very close-knit Muslim population, it would appear. Certainly in North London, where I used to live as well, large Jewish population, very relatively close-knit as well. It's not really the same for the Christian communities, are there, really? Have we maybe done enough to preserve that? Do we need to?
We haven't done enough, and we need to do more. And I think people are lost because we've been embarrassed to proclaim our Christian faith. Even the church is embarrassed to proclaim Christian values at the moment. The issues that Caroline mentioned, gender, sexuality, all of these things are taboo topics. We daren't discuss them, and we need to, because people deep down know the truth. And there is a universal truth. And we're in an age of subjectivity where people think they own their own personal truth. But we need to fight back and say, actually, no, there are two sexes. This is a fundamental known truth of the universe. We need to say that marriage is between a man and a woman in order to procreate. We need to be able to say these things without being cast as a xenophobe, a racist, transphobe, a bigot, and say, actually, these are the things that helped our nation grow, and shying away from them has made people lost. People are reaching out to other places for a moral code because the church doesn't seem to offer a moral code anymore. Places like Black Lives Matter, Extinction Rebellion offer all kinds of moral values that I would say are wrong and bad and divisive, but people need something in their lives, and that thing that they're looking for most of the time, I would say, is God, is faith. And the church needs to step forward and say, here you are, these are the values that helped grow this nation and make it become what it is today.
I know you say that church is becoming woke or has become woke already, but isn't it the case that actually some of the things that they now value, like gay marriage, some churches, some denominations, that's just moving with the times, isn't it? Because some people will see something like gay marriage as not a question of a political opinion, actually as a question of a fundamental human right. And so that kind of thing, those kinds of questions, those are the sorts of things that might isolate people who say, actually, I'm standing up for human rights. The church is telling me this is wrong. There's no marrying that up. Caroline, what would you say to that?
Okay, well, I mean, I wanted to get back to something else, but firstly, I think it's because people don't have a fundamental understanding of Christianity and who God is and who Christ is. And so they're coming at it from a completely different perspective. And so they can only see it as a sort of, perspective of hatred. But really, when Christians talk about marriage and what we mean by marriage, it's not about hating on people. It's just, okay, we want you to have a really close relationship with God. We want you to do what God is calling you to do, and sometimes that's quite tough and that's very tricky for people. And we believe that God has set out a particular vision. But you're right. You're not going to win converts to Christianity. You're not going to make people love Christ by constantly banging on about sort of gay marriage or sex and sexuality, but at the same time we should defend it. However, I think the other thing, sort of building on what Calvin said, is that we in the West do live by and large a very comfortable and settled life, and we have a life of kind of instant gratification, and so people aren't looking to the metaphysical. They are just looking for their needs, their immediate needs to be met now. And so I think they're not asking fundamental questions. And also, I think in a country where we are taught right from a very young age to treat all religions as if they are the same objective truth, then of course it's very hard for people to understand and learn what is truth. And I also think that Justin Welby has been very hard on himself, because the way people convert to Christianity is not necessarily through what the Archbishop says, though he may encourage or discourage a few people. It's through personal relationships and reading more and wanting to understand more. So, I did feel a little bit sorry for the Archbishop. I thought, he's not the Pope. He's not writing encyclicals. He is the first among equals. Okay. He doesn't have that kind of...
All right. Look, good stuff, both of you. Thank you so much. Fascinating. I could talk to you both all day about this particular thing. Calvin, just very quickly, Calvin, what's the state of play with you being elevated to priesthood?
I think we'll have to wait and see on that one. As I mentioned earlier, the church is very woke and it's looking down the wrong path in many ways. They closed the churches during COVID. We've seen moralization around the vaccine, as if to be a good Christian, you have to take the vaccine. Things like this are very wrong and very worrying. So whether they want someone like me in their church is going to be a very big question. We'll have to have answered over the next few weeks.
OK, well, look, good luck and God bless to both of you. Thank you very much for coming on. Caroline Farrow there, of course. And Calvin Robinson, just discussing whether or not we are a Christian country. The Church of England saying it's struggling to, I suppose, fill the pews up, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I would hope, even if most people don't identify, or nearly most people don't identify as Christian anymore, I would hope we're still a country which espouses Christian values at the very least and defends those Christian values, because I think their values worth defending. That's what.
Yeah, I agree completely. And, you know, at the end of the day, I think it would be a shame to lose that identity. I think it's obviously a good thing that we have got various different cultures and religions here. That's a great thing. But, you know, we are what we are at the end of the day, or this country is what it is, I suppose, and, you know, we shouldn't just discard that, should we?
Yes, now over to Wales, where the rules on mask wearing will change from today. Although the requirement to wear one will be removed from most indoor settings, they'll still need to be worn in a number of venues. And our Wales reporter Lily Hewitson has the details for us. Good morning, Lily.
Good morning, guys. As part of the Welsh Government... Oh, sorry, carry on, Mercy.
No, I was going to ask you what changes will be coming into play.
Yeah, that's right. As part of the Welsh Government's phased return to alert level 0, that's what's happening today. It's a change in mask wearing rules here in Wales. Now, the requirement to wear one in most indoor settings will be removed, but there are a couple of venues and settings where you're going to have to continue to wear a mask. So let's kind of run through those venues now. So from today, pupils won't have to wear a mask in classrooms, but schools can now decide where else in the school campus children may or may not have to wear a mask. It's up to the individual schools themselves. Masks are no longer mandatory in places like museums, theatres and cinemas, and they're no longer needed in places of worship too. But those venues where they are going to be needed, masks are still going to be needed on public transport, in salons, in close contact services, in health and social care settings and in shops too. So I had a chat to Chris, who runs Wales's oldest cinema. We had a chat about what the rules will mean for his business in Monmouth going forward.
Well, it's just another step back to normality, isn't it? And I think people want to feel that they're in a place of entertainment where they can behave in a relatively relaxed manner, and wearing a mask isn't a particularly relaxed thing to do. I mean, if you've got this place completely full of people, which we've had over the last 2 weeks, for a comedy night, for example, like Joel Dommett last week, I mean, it's completely unnatural for everybody to be sitting there in masks while they're laughing their head off. So the fact that from Monday they'll be able to take those masks off and behave more naturally is something which I think has got to be an improvement. I'm sure there'll be a reluctance around the building for people to completely take masks off, and my staff, for example, will want to continue to wear masks for their own protection as well. So in public places here, I think we will ask people to bear in mind that there will still be some concerns, but when they watch the entertainment, whether it's a film or a live show, to be able to take the masks off, I think is a major improvement.
So one of the settings where masks will still be required is in salons and close contact services. So I went to Pontypool to have a chat to Paula and her colleague Stacey about what this is going to mean for them going forward, because they're going to have to continue to wear masks in their business.
It's very confusing, all the rules that keep changing all the time, and it is very unfair that, like you say, when you come into a salon-based situation, we have to wear masks, but if you go into like next door to the pub next door and you're mingling with several numbers of people, you haven't got to wear one, so it doesn't make sense, and it's just confusion all about, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we're working one-on-one. There's all like the requirements in place, sanitizer, and I'd like to think that our customers are sensible enough that if they're feeling unwell, they wouldn't come anyway. They would cancel their appointment and wherever. And then you go in next door where there is alcohol, so once the alcohol's in, the common sense is out. There's loads of people in there, you know, all lingered, sat together, and there won't be a mask in sight. Whereas in here, and with my job especially, and when the girls do like facial waxing, the masks need to be removed anyway. When I'm giving like somebody a haircut, they need to remove their mask so that I can finish cutting the sides of their hair, etc., things like that. So I'm sort of over it now. And I think that if it's one rule for one, it should be the same rule for others. And then you travel half an hour up the road and everything has come to a complete stop and there's no COVID regulations in place at all. Exactly. We're a nation and we need to be on the same point all at the same time. I think it's just conflicting who can come up with the best rules, who can, get past COVID quicker, or Wales done it better, or England done it better, rather than us working together. I think we should be in it as one.
Now, the next review of COVID restrictions here in Wales will come on Friday. We could see things like face coverings being scrapped entirely from the end of March, and we could see the rule to self-isolate if you have a positive test actually become guidance, like it is in England, rather than law. But time will tell, we'll have to see. But for now, back to you.
Thank you very much, Lily. Thank you for that report. Lee Hudson there reporting to us from Cardiff about the end of this mass madness, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, cloth masks don't really work, do they? Those flimsy old little blue things don't really work, do they? Let's be honest.
Well, it doesn't... Well,
not some masks genuinely do work. I mean,
Yeah,
cloth masks are ridiculous.
No.
Mandating them.
To be honest,
I think it's ridiculous.
I don't remember the last time I wore one, to be honest with you. And you know what was interesting, actually? I don't know about how you at home feel about this, but when we had that first lockdown, right, fine, the mask was on, right?
Yeah.
And then I think we dipped in and out of a lockdown another couple of times. I started to get a bit more and more annoyed about the whole thing. The latest one with Omicron, I'm sorry, I just refused to wear one. I just didn't wear one. Yeah. I just, I know it was a bit 50-50 split. I was just, I've had enough of this. But it can't be retrospectively fine, presumably.
But if you choose to wear a mask, no judgment, of course.
No, crack on. It's your prerogative. It's the same with everything else, do it if you want to do it, don't do it if you don't. But anyway, right, should we finish with a couple of views?
Yes, let's do that. We spoke about Christianity and whether Britain can still call itself a Christian country. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin, what is he? Is he the Archbishop of Canterbury?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounded wrong. Justin Welby says he actually feels like he's been unable to lure people into the church. Ian here says, Calvin is right that most people lead Christian lives, certainly older people, but the church ceased to be Christian a long time ago. But Calvin's wrong in his belief of the power of prayer. Prayer only helps the person doing the praying, not the one being prayed about, which I think is the psychological benefits of prayer have been studied, and they've been shown to have psychological benefits. That hope that there's somebody bigger watching and who's going to improve your situation.
More or less every day, and I must say I have found it very, very helpful. But I also, I don't know, I feel as though anyway I can point to various situations in my personal life where I've prayed for something or someone else or something like that, and quite an unlikely or improbably good situation has happened. Now, obviously, there's no, I'm not saying that I think my prayers necessarily answered, but certainly I do feel that a bit. Yeah, so I don't know if it just helps the person doing the praying. You're about to
you can pray for a nicer time next time.
There it is. Right, good stuff. Okay, we knew it was coming, didn't we? We just didn't know what she was going to go for. Could it be the tie? Could it be the jacket? Could it just be my face?
I hate yellow.
Yeah, OK. Right, OK. It's not all about you. Right, so here we go. Yes, OK. Well, another couple of views. I can see you've got a few on your screen.
Yes, so we spoke about John Venables, who, when he was 10 years old in 1993, murdered toddler James Bolger. Somebody called Jax here says, it's horrendous that this convicted paedophile and child killer should be freed. We should not be made to pay for a protected life for him at all. That's Jax's views. Thank you so much. But that is it from us here at To The Point. But don't go away, because coming up next is The Briefing with Gloria De Piero. That's after this weather.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A wet day for many of us, particularly for Wales, northern and western England, where the rain will be heavy at times. Showers following for parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland in the colder air behind this cold front that's crossing the country at the moment. And ahead of the cold front, East Anglia in the southeast staying largely dry, if rather cloudy, and fairly mild through the rest of Monday. But it's really across central, northern and western England where we've got the rain. Wales as well, and the rain turning heavier and more persistent, particularly across parts of Wales, southwest England, north and northwest England. Scotland, Northern Ireland feeling colder as showers follow, those showers falling as snow above 300 metres. But there will be some brighter spells away from the showers, and the rain doesn't quite reach East Anglia in the southeast until after dark. It then pushes through, and we keep the rain going into the southeast through the night, but it clears elsewhere. Clear spells and with lighter winds, a touch of frost in many northern and western parts of the UK, dipping to around freezing or just below for Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England, but staying up at 7 or 8 Celsius in the southeast, where it will be a dull and damp start with that rain clinging on right the way through much of the day, really, for the far southeast. It eases elsewhere before another spell of rain moves into parts of Cornwall by the end of the afternoon. Otherwise, plenty of sunshine, North Wales, North Midlands, northwards, and temperatures reaching 8 or 9 Celsius. So a bit colder, but a bit more pleasant with that sunshine replacing the rain for many. Into Tuesday evening, the rain in Cornwall starts to edge north, so affecting much of southwest England and eventually South Wales. And Wednesday's looking like a fairly damp day for the southern 2/3 of the UK, just staying drier and brighter in the far north.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.